Welcome to Talk Tennis. Today, Troy and I are going balls to the wall.
Literally, Michelle, you have them behind you.
Literally. And we are going to talk all things tennis balls. So, Troy, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Maybe you can just give our audience a quick idea of how many days, weeks, and how much research you have done on tennis balls in the last couple months.
Yeah, it's been a good amount. I don't know if I have the exact number of hours, but after doing all the research, talking to a lot of the vendors and some of the people at the brands that the brands of balls that we sell, basically just it was really cool to absorb a lot of information on the processes of how the ball's made, to the history of their ball line, and it just a lot of cool stuff that I just basically tried to absorb. I still wouldn't say, oh, I'm the know-it-all tennis ball person, but basically it was cool just to absorb a lot of good information and just kind of reassured or reaffirmed a lot of our opinions on balls from years of just hitting with them and playing with them. It definitely pays to go with a better ball, and I think that's kind of where we're going in. So Michelle,
Yeah.
you got a lot of the information too, so
Yeah, well, and I think it was cool because there's not a lot known about the quality of tennis balls, or people don't maybe understand, like, why is this ball more expensive? Why should I invest in a better ball? And it was cool to talk to the experts and hear from them, and like even hear about the process of the manufacturing of a ball and where they get the felt and where they get the rubber and all of that. So we're going to start super basic to help you guys just kind of get your feet wet about tennis balls and learn some stuff. And then we'll get a little more in depth as this chat goes on. And then also, we're going to link, we have a page that Troy's been working on that has like endless amount of information. So you can get as involved as you would like when it comes to tennis ball knowledge.
Oh yeah, and then even going beyond just the information that I've come up with and stuff that we've gathered as a content team, we even have some links to the Tennis Warehouse University where our teed-up Professor Crawford is like, if you really want to go deep into the technicalities and like the tests that he's done on the pressure, and it's really cool, some of the stuff in that Tennis Warehouse University, if you really have the time and want the need to learn that information. So
yeah, we cut him out of this conversation because we didn't want it to be too long.
oh yeah, that stuff could go on for days.
So I guess the best place to start is, why does choosing one ball over the other matter? And like, what are things that we should be looking at as consumers, as tennis players, when making the choice for what tennis ball we play with?
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, a lot of our customers and people that have played tennis their whole life, I think if you've played enough tennis and you've played enough to notice which balls you're using when you go buy a can, of a premium price point ball. We're talking, we sell like four different big brands, whether it's like a premium ball like a Wilson US Open, a Pro Pin Marathon, the Dunlop, like we have like the Australian Open. Now we have Technofiber. Technofiber has a court ball that's like a nice premium ball. If you play with those balls, and I think your on-court experience will do the talking, so to speak. But like the way they're designed, the felt on the ball of those premium balls, we'll go and kind of like talk about the anatomy of the ball, but they just have more of that natural fiber material in the felt. The core is better. It creates a better consistent play. And I think for most of us, I mean, there's definitely a lot of different player backgrounds and however much time you get to spend on the court. Not all of us are training like maybe we once were, Michelle, going to an academy growing up. Like players training to go to college or become pro. We're not all at that level. And I think for the most part, like our recreational players, however much time you get to spend on the court a week, whether it's 1 hour a week, 2 hours, maybe 4 or 5, that's a lot of time for, most people's busy lives. And I think when you really get the experience of playing with that premium ball, there's really no looking back or going to the cheaper stuff. It's just the whole experience is just better. You get a more consistent bounce. I mean, there's so many factors going on in a given tennis session. A lot of us play, or most people play outdoors, whether that's the elements. There's so many factors on a given day.
Yeah.
That it's just really worth the investment of going with that premium ball, getting that consistent response. Just like, you take, a lot of our customers take really a lot of, they do a lot of research. They want to know a lot about their racket and their string, and they have their bag and their shoes and all their particular equipment. The ball is really the essential piece that's, going back and forth 1,000 times. I think it really comes down to that those premium balls make a difference in your overall play. And if you're just taking a couple hours of your busy life to play tennis, I think it's definitely worth that experience of going with the premium type of ball versus something, you might find really cheap, whether it's a big box store and you're just grabbing a cheap can here and there. The balls, it's a huge difference in performance, I think.
Yeah. And I think like the conversation always comes up, no matter who you're talking to, it's like control what you can control. And that's like one of the few things that you can control on the court. So,
yeah.
Yeah. So let's go into the anatomy of a ball a little bit. And I know even before we started diving into all this research, like I had heard about the punch needle balls versus the woven balls, but I think we can now break it down even better for our listeners. So let's just start with the materials and how they're applied to the ball and what differences you might see and what creates a different experience.
Yeah. So, the three main components when you break down the ball are going to be, just from a general looking at the ball, the yellow fuzzy stuff, the felt. Beneath that layer is the core, which is typically a natural rubber or a synthetic rubber or a mix of the two. So you got the outer surface, the felt, the core, and then on the inside, it's, typically most balls are hollow, and typically most balls are pressurized with, it's usually just the natural air that they fill it with, but it's a certain pressurization depending on the ball. And then whether it's, the core plays a part with the pressure. So, if it's like a thicker, like talking like a cheap ball, like a really cheap ball, like a pressureless ball that we sell like the bags of pressureless balls.
Right.
Those have no, they're not filled with a certain amount of pressure. It's just an empty core, but they have a lot thicker rubber shell. So that's kind of what makes those cheaper balls last so long. Yeah. But those are the three main pieces: is the felt, the core, and then the air that it's filled with.
Okay.
But, if we want to get it specifically, just one of the main key differences talking about the felt of the ball, what you'll really notice, and kind of what you already touched on, the premium balls, typically speaking, are going to be a woven felt. So that's the construction of how they put the fibers together. So one of the vendors that we spoke to did a really good job explaining it to us, but kind of the analogy he used was with that premium woven felt, the construction of being woven, kind of like a handmade rug, so the way they weave the fibers together is really a mix of a really strong construction for the fibers and gives you sort of that premium felt. So the woven design is construction is on most premium balls. And then even further than that, the actual fibers themselves, on a premium ball, they're typically, so pretty much most tennis balls are going to be a mixture of natural fibers, natural wool fibers, and some sort of like nylon synthetic material.
Yeah.
The premium balls are usually more of a majority of natural wool fibers. So kind of, the majority of the fibers on those premium balls are natural, a little bit of synthetic mixed in. And then as you go down in price to the really, lower price point stuff, going down to like a champion ball, which we carry a few different types of championship balls from the brands. And then even lower than that, like your pressureless balls or something like really cheap you might find at like a convenience store or something like that.
Yeah.
Those are, as you go down, you're going more and more synthetic nylon fibers, to the point where the really cheap stuff is going to be fully synthetic. So not only is the construction matter, the woven premium, but the type of fibers, so more natural fibers. And then as you mentioned with the like the championship ball, like the step down in price on our website for those balls, they're mostly the construction on those is a needle punch. So
Mhm.
pretty much just what it sounds like. The needle is punching the thread into the base of that felt that then gets applied to the core. So it's a faster kind of um, more mechanical process, and it just doesn't really construct that kind of like premium, really strong weave as well as the woven.
Yeah, which is like once you stop to think about like what goes into the manufacturing of a single tennis ball, it's pretty wild. And when you're playing with those premium options, it's like, okay, this is not only a premium material that comes from wool, and then it's like woven in and like attached. Yeah, it's just, I know a lot of people that we talked to were saying if you could even see the process, players would be shocked at like what it takes to make a tennis ball. Like some of us will like go play for an hour and then kind of just like discard as if like, oh, okay.
Oh yeah, yeah, and as far as the price point on the balls, it's gone up, over the years and whatnot since I've worked here. But yeah, the more you know about the factory and the processing of the balls, it's like you're almost surprised that they're not double the price that they are now. Not that like we want to
Exactly.
pay more, but it's really an intricate process, and a lot goes into the details of how that ball's made.
Now, before we move on, this might be a good place to interject our little question about vegan tennis balls.
Yeah.
It comes up from time to time, and you can take that one. Are there any vegan tennis balls on the market that you know of, Troy?
Um, Not particular ones, but basically what I got from kind of researching and whatnot, like I mentioned, the pressureless balls, like the cheaper price point balls, like the ones we sell in the bag, that are the bucket of pressureless balls. Those typically have a full synthetic coat or felt, so to
Yeah.
speak. So the fibers are usually just like a nylon based felt, and then like a lot of those, like some of those cheaper, really cheap balls tend to be like a full synthetic sort of felt. So I guess technically those could be considered a vegan friendly ball, but the downside is that's as you get down in those pressureless balls and um, some of those really cheap price point balls that come in a can, it's just the performance is not great at all. It's just a really cheap felt. The core, that they use for the rubber, synthetic rubber, whatnot, it's usually a really hard feel to the ball. They're kind of heavy, and it just you just don't get that really like consistent and premium feel on contact. So if you're really wanting to go with a fully synthetic ball, you're really sacrificing the overall performance.
However, what we learned also in this process, and everyone reassured us that no animals were hurt in the making of these tennis balls, and it's actually a natural process. These sheep do have to be shaved, so the wool is always going to come off of their bodies anyways. So it's not really anything to be worried about there. From what we heard, actually, some of these sheep farms are very luxurious, that a couple of them told us. So,
Yeah.
okay. So there's that. I also this kind of is a question that we can talk about as we go, but I wanted to just kind of hit real quick on durability and how a lot of us players think that like after we cannot see the logo as well on the tennis ball, maybe that means that it's like old, dead, time to get rid of it. But I think based on our chat and us playing, you could probably give us a little bit better advice on durability of tennis balls.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like a misconception. Like as soon as the text on the ball or the paint that they use for the label starts to come off, people think oh, that ball's done. It's gone to the waste yard, gone to the dog house or whatever.
Yeah, dog ball.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of similar analogy that I get sometimes with like players talking about strings, like with multi-filaments. People think as soon as you start to see like a multi-filament start to fray, or like the coating comes off and you see the little fibers starting to split, they're like, oh, that string is worn out and done. But like what we've come to learn and heard from the people that make the strings, the manufacturers, that's when the string kind of hits its peak as a multi-filament, so kind of an analogy there. But like,
Yeah.
I think for me, it really just comes down to the bounce and the consistency of the ball. So those premium balls are definitely going to have a longer lifespan than the cheaper stuff, whether it's stepping down to the championship or even below that. It's just a more consistent play. The felt holds up longer. I think some people really get they notice like when the felt starts to really like puff up or fluff up.
Yeah.
That's a downside.
Mhm.
But I mean, I've always liked balls when they become a little bit more fluffy. It kind of like slows the speed of the ball down a little bit, and I also feel like I get better feel off the string bed. Like the strings can grab the felt a little bit better. I don't know if it's the same for you, or for you prefer like, a more faster feel, maybe because a little bit different stroke style on the forehand or whatnot, maybe more spin here and a little flatter there. But I think the durability you really notice with those premium balls, the felt is really good over time, in that whether it's the natural wool and the woven construction together, but that really plays a part. And then the other thing too that I've noticed with those premium balls and kind of doing the research is that whether it's the core is a completely natural rubber or mostly natural rubber with a little bit of filler, that consistent core is really a big part of it, I think, with the premium balls.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Going to the core, going to talk about the rubber. I know there's several brands that we talk to that are affiliated with tire companies as well. So that kind of speaks to the material story. You can take it from there.
Yeah. I mean, just off the top, one of the first ones we spoke with Dunlop.
Mhm.
Dunlop, as a company, started in the tire business going back like 100 years or whatnot. I forget the exact year, but I mean, they started as a tire company. They're super into the rubber business, and I think that plays a part in the way they take pride in the rubber that they use for the core of their tennis ball. But I would say that's, consistent throughout the brands that we dealt with. I forget, I don't know if you remember which one was partnered with Bridgestone.
Technofiber.
Yeah. Technofiber's partnered with Bridgestone tires. So, most of their premium balls are going to be mostly a full-on natural rubber core. And, before researching this, I never really thought too much about it, but, the rubber comes from a tree. A lot of times it's, I found that, they're sourced from different locations. I know the Philippines is, or was it the Philippines or Thailand?
Mm-hmm. Both.
I forget.
Yeah.
They mentioned, but one of them's like a big source for natural rubber. But that core really makes a difference, being, that natural rubber. They do. And then like to dial them in, because these balls all have to get to a certain, weight and dimension specification for the ITF and the ATP and the WTA and all that, to get to that, perfect weight and whatnot. They will use fillers in that natural rubber from time to time, but in general, that natural rubber core is really going to give you that premium feel and a really consistent play.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the outlier balls in the industry that kind of have a different story. But I thought it was pretty interesting too. Wilson has the Trinity ball, and just what you brought up is when they were creating that, they really wanted to make sure that it could play to the right standards. So because of that, the wall of the ball, the rubber wall of the ball, is a bit thicker to get to the right weight. And I thought that was interesting. I didn't even realize that maybe a different tennis ball could have a different wall thickness.
Yeah, something to do. I know with the original Trinity ball, the one that we sell, something to do with the felt application, or being a little bit lighter of the balance of weight had to be shifted. Yeah, so basically a slightly lighter coat, a lighter felt, had to be compensated for by creating a thicker, slightly more dense core.
Yes.
But that's the Trinity ball we sell now. There is a Trinity ball to come, I believe, and that one is going to be specced out a bit different, and a bit more of, I guess, what you would call maybe a true player's ball. That kind of premium feel going on with the new Trinity. So that'll be cool to see.
Yeah. And we have a podcast speaking all about that ball coming soon. So you guys will have to be sure to keep an eye out for that, because we got to talk to one of the Wilson Pro Lab what was her official title? Like scientist, like
Oh yeah.
it was engineer, it was like material engineer. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And she told us all about behind the scenes making the Trinity and then updating Trinity to the Trinity Pro. So super excited about that. And that's for anyone listening that doesn't know the story on that ball, it is a sustainable ball. It doesn't come in a pressurized plastic or tin can. It comes in a recyclable kind of like almost like sleeve box, you could even say. And they're using recycled materials, and the ball is meant to be more durable. So you are not creating more waste and you're reusing balls. It's a great option for teaching pros. It's a great option for traveling tournament players. It's really a great ball. So if you haven't had a chance to try it, highly recommend. Like it's such a positive ball for the industry to like be taking that tiny step towards sustainability. Obviously, it's like a pinpoint on my heart. I love talking about sustainable stories, but yeah. So that's Trinity and Trinity Pro, and stay tuned for the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot. Okay, so we got the felts dialed in, we got the rubber core dialed in. Do you want to hit at all on gas content and like what's inside the ball? You kind of already did talk about that, and I know it kind of was differing from vendor to vendor, and some people didn't, disclose too much information. But we did get some information that we can share.
Yeah. Yeah. The main thing with the air, definitely, from what I found, is it's pretty much using just the natural air that is in the environment. Coming down to like what is it, like 78% nitrogen, 21% oxygen, and then less than 1% of a mixture of a few other gases in there. But that's typically what they'll use. I know that when we talked to Technofiber, they actually were very helpful in like talking about like different processes that they've tried in the factories over the years. Because the one thing that they mention is that they found nitrogen is the one gas that typically is less likely to permeate through the core, so
Yeah.
it stays within the ball better. But I mean, that's technically just like the science that they found. But when they actually applied it to like try to make balls and fill them with mostly nitrogen or full nitrogen gas instead of the natural air composition, when they did their testing, their R&D, and then their on court durability tests, it really was kind of negligible in the overall durability test. So they kind of ruled that out a long time ago and basically just used the natural air composition. But they didn't. Not every brand gave like an exact number on the PSIs
Right.
Of the air inside the ball. One of the ones I read, I think, was like an article on the U.S. Open ball being made a while back, and I think they mentioned something like as they were putting the two, I guess, hemispheres of the core together, because they basically have two half spheres that come together and they enclose them with the glue. As they're filling the air, they would use like 18 psi to initially pressure the ball, and by the time it cured and sealed and was all said and done, it settled at that like 15 psi, which was like their target zone. So
okay,
there was a little bit of air pressure lost as they're like sealing the ball, which makes sense. But as it settled and it cured and was ready for the court, it ended up being about 15. So I've heard different levels of PSI, but most of your premium balls, your balls that you're playing with, are going to have some level of pressurization. I know one thing mentioned with the original Trinity ball is it has less pressure because there's a thicker core, so a smaller space in there, lower pressure with that ball, and then you go all the way down to like a pressureless ball, which there's no air pressure inside the core, but it's basically getting its bounce from like a really thick, firm rubber inside the core.
Which I think, like, based on player experience, that's why sometimes when you've hit those balls for a bit, we don't like to call them, but we kind of refer to them as like rocks. They get hard. And I can assume that's why, because the felt's kind of like worn off and that rubber is thicker. So it kind of probably would get hard.
Yeah. They're definitely feel harder. They feel heavier on the strings, like when you hit them. So pressureless we're not going to like sit here and say pressureless balls have no use. There's definitely high school teams out there, players that are putting in, shoot 25 hours a week on the court or 40, whatever, how many hours they're putting in a week, a ton of hours.
Yeah.
So they definitely have a use for that type of practice player.
Right.
But they do have their downsides, like the pressureless balls are really heavy, really hard. And so what that causes is a lot of shock on the arm. So definitely not good if you're like experiencing any tennis elbow, because they create more shock and more vibration, like on the contact of the racket. So
yeah. And like, don't be showing up to play a USTA match with pressureless balls.
Yeah.
You won't make friends.
you might get kicked out of the club.
Yeah. I was going to kind of pivot from there to talk a little bit about the purpose of sealing the balls and how the second you open a can of balls, basically the air does start to dissipate, and that's where like kind of the pressure time like begins, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But then also I wanted you to touch on like durability. Like if I bought a case of balls today and I didn't use it for 6 months, are they still going to be playable balls?
So that's the whole, packaging process and why it's so important and why we love popping that can, that pressurization, and not only that pressurization, but that smell.
Yeah.
kind of like your whole podcast room there, Michelle.
Right.
But just popping that can, basically the pressure inside the can is set to be match the pressure of the air inside the ball. So it's supposed to be equal on both sides of the core and the felt. That's what keeps them at their basic, pressure inside the can to store them. But as soon as you crack that, yes, the balls are entering the world, entering the environment, and they will start losing their pressure gradually as you just let them sit, or, you start banging them against your racket and hitting 100-mile-an-hour forehands like Michelle.
Well, and then quickly, I'm going to interject, because that is why balls need to be shipped via ground shipping, right?
Yes. Typically speaking, when we ship a case, that is one of the reasons why, we set the shipping, or it's a ground shipment, because we're trying to eliminate that time in a plane. And the changing of the altitude and the pressure, it's sometimes can damage the case. And we've had instances in the past where we've noticed that, like when balls were shipped by air, that the cans may have popped, or they lose some pressure, and it really kills the lifespan of the balls, in which makes it, it kills the reason why you would ship it that way. It damages your product. But as far as the shelf life goes, if you're buying a case of balls and you are just storing them to use throughout the year or whatever, or even, you have backstock cases, as far as what we've learned is as long as you store them in a nice, safe environment, whether it's in your closet, kind of a controlled temperature, not too hot, not too cold, they can last a while. We heard a couple years from some of the vendors, that they felt safe about their balls being stored, as long as it's within a controlled environment, controlled temperature. You probably don't want to keep them in your trunk of your car, where, it's going to hit extreme temps and get really hot and cold, that type of thing.
Right. And then it's also like a good little plug. Like if you guys have the holidays coming up, or a tennis player's birthday coming up, a case of tennis balls is actually a really cool gift, I think. So just saying, next time you're confused about what to get me. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, cool. So that basically covers the anatomy of the ball, right? Did we forget anything before maybe breaking down the ball options from some of the vendors?
As far as the anatomy goes, I think that pretty much covers a lot of what we discovered talking to the different brands and whatnot.
Yeah. And shout out to all of them. They were super helpful, and it was really cool to kind of learn more. Obviously, as tennis geeks at Tennis Warehouse, when you're like not as geeked out on something, it's always kind of a shock. So
yeah,
it's been a fun learning experience for sure. Before we get into ball specifics, like brand specific tennis balls, let's have you explain the difference between like an extra duty and a regular duty tennis ball.
Yeah. So obviously the main reason, there's the two types. Usually the extra duty are best for hard court play. Extra duty, extra durable, I guess you could say. but typically speaking, there's just a higher, in my brain, I'm thinking like a higher thread count, but basically more fibers to create the felt. So a little bit thicker, a little bit more there on the outer felt to protect, against the really gritty, rough surface of a hard court. Whereas a regular duty ball, a little bit lower in the thread count or the fibers of the felt, so to speak. And those are typically for a softer court surface. So typically clay courts, um, maybe I guess on a grass court too, or like any of those sort of different courts, the omni courts or the synthetic grass probably would be better off with a regular duty. But that's not to say you can't mix or match, or if you showed up to a hard court match with a regular duty ball, you can't play with them. But there is a slight difference there in the amount of felt.
Okay.
And one thing also too, typically with that, someone told me one time, and this goes way back, but with the regular duty balls being a slightly lower amount of felt fibers, and typically regular duty used on a clay court, someone had mentioned that kind of if you use an extra duty ball on a clay court, the more the ball fluffs up, the thicker the felt is, the more likely the clay is going to stick to the felt of the ball too. So that's kind of another reason why you might want a regular duty on a softer court like a clay court.
That makes sense. Let's run through some of the ball options that we have on our website, and I would love to start with Dunlop.
So of the Dunlop balls that we carry, I guess you can kind of go from the ultra premium highest price point, which is the Australian Open ball. So kind of like how Wilson has the US Open ball, Dunlop has the Australian Open. And it's actually, from what we learned, pretty similar to the Dunlop ATP ball, which is like their sort of like standard pro ball for the ATP. It's just a slight bit difference in the construction of the felt, and I think the core is pretty similar, but for the Australian Open, they wanted that particular ball with a slightly different felt. They felt like it was the best ball for their surface and their tournament. But both really, really good balls between the Australian Open and the ATP, very premium, and they're pretty similar in price. I think the difference on our site's like about $5 for the case and the difference there. But either of those, really nice premium balls, higher count of natural wool on the coat or the felt there, and also going to be a woven construction ball. So
nice,
really good balls there. The next step down for them, and this has kind of been a T-Dub in-house favorite for many, many years, is the Dunlop Grand Prix. And it's kind of a unique ball because it kind of sits at that like lower price point, which would be most likely similar to like the championship line of balls, which is usually kind of that slightly lower performance. So it's kind of at that price point, but it plays like a premium ball. So it's more similar to those premium balls, like I mentioned, the ATP and the Australian Open, as far as being like more natural wool, having that woven construction and a really nice bounce to it. So Grand Prix definitely is one that we're familiar with and used over the years. It's a good, definitely a good bang for your buck. And like I said, kind of has that championship ball price point, but plays more like a premium. And then Dunlop also has their championship ball, which on our website, it's a little confusing because it says Dunlop ATP Championship. It's not the ATP ball. It just has the ATP label because their partnership with the tour.
Right.
But it is a championship ball. So just think of that one as the Dunlop Championship. Good price point. Not going to be as premium performance as their high-end stuff like the Australian Open or the ATP ball itself. And that one's definitely going to be more of a blend of synthetic, natural fiber, and it's the needle punch construction on that one. So
good to know. And I guess you've made it pretty clear this whole time, but like that keyword championship is kind of like a trigger to like realize that it's going to be not as premium, probably needle punch, more synthetic fibers, not as durable. Correct?
Yes, definitely. So for, my gearheads out there that, know their tennis strings, it would kind of be like that analogy of like the premium ball being like your premium multi-filament and your championship ball being more of like your traditional synthetic gut kind of thing.
That's a good way to explain it. I think that will resonate. Hopefully, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then yeah, Dunlop we're seeing them use a lot of those balls at several WTA and ATP tournaments. So I mean, that's pretty awesome. And if they're using the tennis balls for those tournaments, they're probably good enough for us too.
Oh yeah, I forget the exact tournaments they mentioned recently when we talked. If they had the Miami ball or something like that for the WTA, or I forget which exact
Yeah.
tournaments, but they definitely had quite a few Masters 1000s in there and stuff. So
Yeah, yeah. Moving right along. Let's talk about some Wilson tennis balls.
yeah, Wilson balls.
They've got a lot of options.
Yeah, and obviously, kind of, we have a whole podcast episode that's really unique into the Trinity ball because it definitely is different than the industry standard, and really excited to try their new one when it comes out.
Yeah.
I believe it's called the Trinity Pro.
Mm-hmm.
But just starting with their more traditional pressurized ball, the full pressurized ball, I guess you could say, at the very top, very premium, they have the U.S. Open. Been around for a really long time. I have a lot of history with that ball because that's kind of the main ball that we used, or at least at the junior college I played at. So our team used those every day for practice and matches, and our whole like junior college conference did. So I really like that ball. It's a great premium ball. Lots of you can tell when you hit those balls, lots of natural wool fibers in there, a really nice rubber core, just a really consistent bounce and very durable over time. But the ball that kind of stood out when we talked to Wilson was the Federer ball.
Yes.
And it's crazy because like I know you've hit with them. I've hit with them from time to time. Like when they first came out, we got like a case to sample and whatnot. That ball is legit. Like it's crazy. And it's not that in the actual construction, it's not all that different than the US Open, but they did work with Roger and he selected a certain type of the felt, definitely a lot of natural wool. He even got into the details of like altering the color of the fibers slightly more to, I guess, maybe his visual or his eyes, the way he picks up the color. He liked that color a little bit more than the US Open. And the ball just plays really good for really long. Like we hadn't had that sample case. I think it was over a year ago, but sometimes when we go down to test on the T-Dub court, there'll still be some RF balls sitting in the old cart of balls that we leave.
Yeah.
And you'll pick them out from like 6 months ago and you're like, damn, it looks old, but like the ball still plays really well. So
yeah,
yes, it's a little expensive in price. It comes in a really cool, nice, like tin can instead of the typical plastic, but those balls are legit. They're not just for like a collectibles item. I mean, you could definitely do that too, but
yeah. Well, and it's also a 4-ball can, which is something a little different. And there's a note from Roger in there.
Oh yeah.
No, it's cool that everything he does put his name on. He has hands on, and like you said, we're like literally geeking out about this ball. But like it's cool to know that he helped make it, and if you've tried it, it's a premium experience.
Yeah, so. It's crazy. It's not just like a collectibles item or like a gimmicky thing. It's a sick ball.
And although I do have a can on the side of my desk because I mean, why not? It does look nice too.
I still have a can from like a year or two ago that I've stored at home and keep as a collectibles item on the shelf. But
nice.
They play really well. So those are their premium stuff, the US Open, the RF Legacy tennis ball. And then from there, we have the championship line. So we have the Wilson Champ, regular duty, extra duty. We even have high altitude for those. And I think the high altitude's recommended for like, I don't know exactly the number, but I want to say it's like 3,500 feet of elevation or more.
Sounds about right.
I know you mentioned when you were in New Mexico, the area you were at, you played high altitude sometimes.
We played high altitude. And it's funny because if you talk to anyone or if you're someone that plays in high altitude, you know how much the ball really does fly. And so it is important to switch over to high altitude balls. And then anyone that's like traveling from sea level to high altitude, like just be ready for the ball to fly in that thin air.
Yeah. Because I even experienced that a little bit when we go to Indian Wells. Because I don't know the exact elevation of where the tournament's at, but the ball does fly through that desert air, like that dry, thin air.
Yeah.
a little bit more. But the main thing with those or not the pressureless, but
High
the high
altitude.
altitude is there is a lower PSI inside the ball. They take some of that, they kind of suck some of the juice out of the ball with that pressure and give you like a little bit more of a deader ball.
Right.
I know we made a joke in a previous podcast, but I'm going to start using the high altitude balls when I play singles against Michelle, so that I can slow down the speed of the ball and hopefully get less winners from her forehand and her backhand and
yeah. And then I'm going to switch them out because we heard the new Trinity Pro ball is going to be a little firmer, and that sounds like it will be just perfect for me.
No, we don't need you with anything faster, Michelle.
Right?
You already hit a big enough ball. But yeah, those are the champ balls from Wilson, and those are going to be a higher concentration of synthetic versus the natural wool that you'll get from the premium stuff, and also those are the needle punch construction on the felt for those. So
okay. What else? Is there anything else about Wilson balls that we should add? Well, again, check out the other podcast. It's really interesting.
A lot of information on Wilson.
A lot of information. Okay. Let's switch over to pen balls.
Yeah.
And I think this is interesting, and I feel weird that I like kind of just learned this, but I obviously know that Head and Pen are a connected brand, but I didn't realize that in the United States we sell pen balls, but in Europe they sell head balls.
Yeah. Different.
So a little bit of a different, like if you're in Europe listening to this isn't necessarily the same access to tennis balls that you have because our markets are slightly different. So
yeah. So here in the States, it's definitely the pin ball. And with the pin line, they're ultra premium, durable. It goes with the name as the Pro Pin Marathon. That's a great ball. Definitely my favorite of the pin balls that we sell, and definitely right up there as a great ball that plays right up there with the other premiums on the market. I'd say with the U.S. Open and the Dunlop Australian or their ATP. Definitely a good premium ball there. But one thing I noticed with those is I do like the color of the felt. It's a really bright pop on that Pro Pin, so it really sticks out, gives you that really optic yellow color, and just the way the felt's designed, premium ball, great core, very consistent over time. So those are great. And then just a step down from that, they have the Pin Tour ball, which I believe is pretty much a lineage or a carry on from what used to be called the Pin ATP ball. But since the ATP, switched partnerships over to Dunlop, I think they just reconfigured the name to the Pin Tour. But for those out there that were Pin ATP fans, that Pin Tour should be pretty much the same ball and a great one to go with. About $10 cheaper than the Pro Pin, but still a great premium woven felt ball there. And then the ball that probably is one of the, I don't know, it's got to be like the bestseller, most known in, at least in the US, is the Pin Championship. I mean, everybody kind of knows that ball. It's like been around forever. Probably the most common ball you'll see in most leagues and most, and I mean, some of the tournaments, they use that ball, but just a really good, consistent, even though it is the championship ball, and typically those have a little bit more, synthetic fibers than woven, and usually the needle punch felt. Mm-hmm. It's just a very consistent, valuable ball. So for those looking for that good value, that's a great choice. But, for a little bit more, I definitely think it's worth the investment to go up to the Tour or the Pro Pin Marathon.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like the past couple of weeks, normally we have like cases of balls, but we went through our case and I've been using a lot of that Tour ball and I really like it.
Yeah.
Would
you say it plays a little quicker, a little slower, or the felt's a little fluffier after it wears, or what do you think about it?
I felt like it had a pretty consistent wear. It didn't get too fluffy, or it hasn't gotten too fluffy for me. I mean, based on it playing indoors and pretty low key, cool temperatures, nothing too humid. It does maybe feel slightly faster, and maybe that's why I like it. Mm-hmm. But there's another ball that we're going to talk about that like it kind of felt comparable to that, but maybe like a little softer at impact. So like the felt really comfortable on the string bed.
You're still talking about the Pin Tour, right?
Yes.
And that's where that you really, I think a lot of people, if they are to test the variety of balls and the differences between the cheaper ones and the premium, you really start to get that feel off the string with the nice, thick, mostly natural wool woven felt. You really you can feel that kind of cushion on impact, and it just creates a better a better experience. Or like, I'm thinking of like an old Babolat video I watched talking about something, and the French say the pleasure of the contact. It's really what you notice. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, I think we have one more brand to hit, and this one's a quick one because they're new to the United States market as far as tennis balls. So Technofiber.
Yeah. The one Technofiber ball that we carry, the Technofiber Court, definitely a premium ball, nice, high content of natural wool. I think in my notes, yeah, it's about 50% wool.
Yeah, I was gonna say also like Technofiber's made such a great name for themselves over the past couple of years, like really showing their French like heritage and like how much attention to detail they pay. And it was clear just talking to the people at Technofiber about their tennis balls that they put a lot of attention to detail in them, and you can tell when you hit it.
Yeah, yeah. So I was surprised, and I know we've been testing the ball ever since we got it. And yeah, that court ball, even though, you look at our website and, Penn has a bunch of balls, Wilson has a bunch, Dunlop, and you see Technofiber there with just one type, one case on our website. You might think, oh, they only have one case. They might not, maybe they don't know what they're doing with the balls. But no, it's a legit ball. I would say ever since we started using that one, it's probably like a Tita playtester favorite right now. And
I was going to say that.
Not just saying that to hype Technofiber, but it's a good ball. You've spent more time on it than I have. But what was your experience with it?
No, 100%. It's becoming a very popular ball amongst the playtesters. And I think like consistently from can to can, every time we're experiencing the same experience. So it's firm, but like that's the one that I was speaking about, that it does feel a little bit faster to me, but I'm okay with that. But like at impact, it's nice and comfortable, consistent wear. It seems to be quite durable also. So like not experience any fluffed up feel after an hour of bashing. But yeah, I know we all are kind of enjoying it. And like one of the big things that I remember when they released into the market is that they've partnered with the SCTA, which is Southern Cal Tennis Association. Yeah. And like the SCTA is a bunch of very particular players. So
yeah, because you grew up one of them, huh, Michelle?
100%. So we are very particular about our balls.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to see even another option, even though it makes it hard for you guys maybe to decide which balls to try. The Technofiber ones are definitely ones to give a test drive with.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's worth a try. It's, it's kind of at that premium price point, but I think it's very competitive with those other balls on the market that are the similar price. And then just a little side bonus, I don't know how long the promotion is going to go for, but like right now with the Technofiber balls, you get free shipping on a case. So no ground shipping fee. That's also with Dunlop balls too right now. So Dunlop and Technofiber, that's a pretty good incentive for most people, because the ground shipping is kind of a deal buster sometimes if you can find them in an actual brick and mortar or whatnot. So with that free shipping, it's great.
Yeah. Buy now. We'll add links to the show notes, so it will make it easy. We kind of wanted to just like hit a tiny bit. We didn't really like take a deep dive into some of the junior ball options and like what makes those different. If you're just starting out, if you're a parent or a coach or whatnot, the junior balls are so cool because they're softer, they're bigger, they're easier. Like it just makes the learning experience so much better. Everything from like green dot, red dot, orange dot, which like indicates different firmness of the balls. And then also the foam balls, which I think are such a cool teaching tool because literally like no one's going to get hurt with those. So do you have anything to say about the junior ball options?
Yeah, I think it's just a great thing that ever since they started the junior,
the quick start,
yeah, and the different sizes of the court, and basically like kind of training wheels for kids with the balls is kind of like basically starting them off with a big kind of slow foam ball as they're young, and as they progress through the ages and the levels, it basically just guides them smaller and smaller and more similar to a regular felt ball
Exactly.
until they're ready to go to the full size court and start playing with the big boys, the big girls.
Yeah. Well, and we even know players that use some of those balls as training tools.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially during late last year during quarantine, one of the videos I was, playing indoor tennis or, trying to give kids and people that want to train. I was using those junior foam, the really big foam ones with the junior racket, and trying to give people some incentive to play inside,
without breaking anything.
Yeah, not like the players in the hotels at the Australian Open this year when they're hitting against the glass and making all kinds of ruckus.
Oh my gosh, that was wild. Okay, so let's wrap it up. And basically, one final question, like, what is the biggest reason, or why should I invest in a premium tennis ball? Like, we did cover this at the beginning, but I feel like it's like good to reiterate what we learned and why we think that it's important to be knowledgeable about your balls.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that's kind of stupid that came to my mind after we did one of the previous podcasts, but like kind of that saying that's going around on social media or whatever, like, just treat yourself or treat yourself, really it's really not that much more of an investment when you look at the premium ball versus the champ ball versus anything that's even cheaper than that. I mean, if you like break down, say like a $90, $89.95 case, by 24 cans, you're paying about $375 a can. And say you go down to $69, like a $70 case, that comes out to like almost $3 a can, like $2.90 or whatever. And then you go even lower to like $59.95. It's like $2.50. So it's really like marginal. You're talking like a little over $1 to maybe less than $1 to really go from that like mid-range or championship ball to, your ultra premium. And I think it's definitely worth it in the experience, especially like I mentioned in the opening of the podcast, for us recreational players that are, getting an hour or two of our quality time, our family time, our busy lives to just really get out there and do what we love and hit the ball back and forth or play a set or play with your buddies on the weekend, some dubs. That amount of time you're spent on the court, just get the better ball, just spend the extra buck. Nowadays, there's so much access, whether it's buying the case from us and like I said, a couple brands are even doing free shipping right now. Or we now, even a lot of these brands, we sell individual cans, so if you're buying, your gear, you're getting a racket or you're getting, some new pair of shoes, we can throw a couple cans in there with that package, 2 or 3 cans. And in the premium balls on the site per can, it's like a 50-cent difference from like, your ultra premium to your lower price point. So I think really it just comes down to that feel on court, the pleasure of hitting that premium ball, and just a consistent bounce. Like I said, there's so many other factors that are going on, from our rackets, our string tension, to the wind, to the sun, to a dog barking in the back, all these crazy factors that could be with a given tennis session, or whatnot. And it's like, just treat yourself and just get the premium ball, enjoy your time on court and have fun,
Totally. Yeah. Makes complete sense. And it will be a much more pleasurable experience, hopefully. So hopefully that helps educate you guys, because we've learned so much through this process. And I feel like Troy is now the resident tennis ball expert. So I will be directing all questions.
I wouldn't say that. I just say that we had really good help from the vendors and, me and you, while we got to interview people, and we just absorbed, that's all it is. So
yeah. Shout outs to Dunlop, Technofiber, Wilson, and Headpen. They all were super helpful and really took the time to make sure that we could learn and become better, have more knowledge on this subject, so we could help you guys be able to learn and have more knowledge on this subject.
And it's just like what I'm thinking right now, talking about like the main difference with the felts, is like when we talk to Dunlop or whatever, it's like, get that nice premium handmade rug. That premium ball. Don't go get that cheap industrial carpet crap, that you get with a really cheap can of balls. Or when you're at, like a convenience store and you see a $1.50 can or $2 can, it's like, that stuff's junk, man. Just like leave that for the dogs or the walkers or the
Well, totally. And like that kept coming up in all of our conversations where it was like, okay, we're working so hard to like make sure that our racket and strings and grip is so nice and ready to go and restrung and the perfect tension. And like, why would you just like crap out on the other thing that you can control, which is tennis balls? Like,
yeah, the thing that's actually making the contact with the racket, thousands of times in a session or whatever, it's like,
yeah. And also, like, when you show up to the courts and you're opening a nice can of balls, you're that person that brought the good balls. And
oh, yeah.
like, be that person. That's what I said, I think, on one of our chats. I was like, don't be the person that's like opening like the championship balls for a match.
Yeah.
Bring the good balls.
Yeah, if you really want to stunt, man, you just get out there and you crack open that fresh can of the Roger Federer, the legacy ball, man, and you're like, oh dang, this guy right here, or this girl right here.
Right? I could just see it now. Like they're wearing the RF hat. They've got maybe unique.
Oh yeah,
they've got their RF
bag.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the wristbands on, maybe the head tie ready to go.
Right? Totally.
And just crack open the Roger balls and start ripping one-handers,
I wish. Yeah. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here because as I continue to say through this project, I am shocked at how much we can talk about tennis balls. But that's a solid amount of information. And if you guys have any questions whatsoever on tennis balls, or anything tennis related, feel free to reach out. You can always email us at podcast@tennis-warehouse.com. Troy, any last words?
Hey man, just treat yourself and get the good stuff. Play with the good stuff when we're talking about balls. So
treat yourself. New balls, please.
Yep.
Okay, go get some new balls and happy hitting.